Is Sorcerer the most underrated movie of the 1970s? And you can definitely drop that comment on this episode. If you're listening on YouTube, of course, drop the comment down below, and everything. But yeah. So my first impression, since this was a first time watch for me, my first impression of the movie was basically wow. Um, I don't think I've ever really watched a movie that that's been made exactly the way Sorcerer has been made. I must say at the beginning here that I was impressed with it thoroughly, and I know that a lot of people who seen the movie, they have a problem with the fact that there's so much setup at the I would say like the first 40 45 minutes out to an hour pretty much is set up for getting to know these guys that we are going to go on this suicide run with, basically. I had no problem with the four what they call vignettes to introduce each character and to find out how they all ended up in this small village in South America, basically. I can see why uh the movie is heralded as being very influential and being very intense. But I will talk about that a little bit more. I will say this also: the title of the movie does not fit the movie at all, because why is it called Sorcerer? Ain't nobody in here doing no Harry Potter stuff, so why is it called Sorcerer? I do know that one of the trucks is called Sorcerer, but at the same time, when you think of the title, you thinking to see some witchcraft. I mean, and granted, there is a part where it is maybe some witchcraft going on here. But again, I'll talk about that when I get to talking about that bridge scene, and everything. But the movie was directed by William Friedkin, and this was his follow up to The Exorcist, in a sense, in a way. And it's like, how do you go from that to this? And I would always love to know, like, how did he even come up with going from that to this, in a sense? And because I mean, The Exorcist is one of probably the biggest movies of all time. Is I do consider it one of the movies that actually shook the pillars, that shook up the you know movie world, basically. And everything like that. And I enjoy that movie a lot, uh, and everything. French Connection also, I'm a fan of it as well. But here it's like, okay, let's do this movie, and then let's kind of go against what I guess I was known for. And I'm speaking like as William Freaking, like what I was known for. Let me kind of switch it up and let me kind of go a little ballsy here with this next movie that I'm going to do. And because I mean, it is a risky project, in a sense. Like, I'm gonna do this movie. It's gonna be about these guys that's risking their lives, and everything. And none of them are particularly good people at all. So, like, how do you, and especially in the '70s, like, how do you invest in characters that really have no true redeeming qualities about them, and everything? This isn't like the Dirty Dozen or the Wild Bunch or Bonnie and Clyde or Thomasina and Bushrod. Even the French Connection with Papa Doyle. I mean, he has somewhat of a redeeming quality, a little bit, and everything. It's nothing like that. But these guys, like, they're not good people. They're all there for very bad reasons. And it's almost, well, I'll talk about that in a minute. But one thing that I did like about the movie, it does almost feel like documentary style because of how it's filmed and how certain things are framed and everything. So it does give that kind of realism, and then certain aspects is even a surrealism to the movie also. Um, and I think one of the things that also hurt the initial release of this movie was the fact that William Freakin, he did not compromise his vision for the project. Like, maybe if he would have trimmed down the vignettes and got to, the village quicker, or maybe made a few changes here and there, like maybe things would have been a little different. Um, so I was asked this question also, like for anyone who has seen the movie before and have probably seen it multiple times, like, do you think that the audience expect a completely different movie? I mean, it's called Sorcerer. Like, what do you, when you go into a movie like that? I'm pretty sure you're expecting one thing and then you got something different. I'm pretty sure everybody who's watched a movie that has a particular, you see the title of a movie and it's like, okay, well, I'm going into it based on this. I'm thinking it's going to be one thing, and then it turns out to be something completely different. And in a lot of cases, that can hurt a movie. And this is being one of those big examples of why it hurt the movie. But also at the same time, I would say this: if the movie wasn't called Sorcerer, what could it have been called? So, yeah, that's kind of a interesting thing for me, at least. So let's get into talking about the four main guys here in this movie that we follow and everything. So we get these four vignettes, and we start off with Nilo, played by Francisco Rabbi, and he's like this smooth, suave assassin. Because I mean, as soon as the movie comes on, there he is, ease into his room, and he taking somebody out, and then he, like kind of do some sorcery to get out of there, basically, and leaves. Then we are introduced to Casim, uh, also known as Martinez, because that's the name he goes by once he gets down to South America. But he's played by Amadou, and everything. And he's like a revolutionary type, a rebellion type thing. And then his people, they get pretty much ambushed in this building. A couple people get killed, and his friend or his brother, one, they never really specify exactly who the guy is. He gets taken away, but he's in the crowd, and then he, of course, disappears, and everything. Then the next one is Victor, um, who is like this kind of banker type of person, but then he gets caught up with some fraud with his brother-in-law and everything, and he has to unfortunately leave his wife. He doesn't get to say goodbye, and it was their anniversary also around this time because she gave him this watch, and his brother-in-law is up killing himself because basically the hammer was going to be coming down on them. So the brother-in-law kills himself, and then Victor is like, I'm not going down for this, so I gotta get the hell out of here. So he pays the concierge to tell his wife that he had to go away on business, and he just hightails it out of there, and everything. And then the last of the four is Roy Scheider's character of Jack, who goes by Dominguez once he gets to South America, and we are introduced to him. He's a part of this crew or whatever, and they go and rob this church. Yes, they robbed the church, and doing the whole bingo thing. But it was during a wedding when they decided to do this robbery, because they had this bingo game, and then while they, like, everyone's in the back, and the priest and everything is in the back, they counting up the money. While the wedding is going on, they pretty much kind of infiltrate their way through to get to the back room. They hold up everybody hostage. In the chaos of everything that's going on, one of the guys shoots one of the priests, and they end up getting away with all the money. And as they're in the getaway car, because Jack is driving, as they're in the getaway car, they kind of get into an argument. Jack takes his eyes off the road for like 2 seconds, basically. That's all it takes. Takes his eyes off the road for 2 seconds. Truck comes out of nowhere. He tries to avoid the truck, but he sideswipes the truck. And you know what? You can clearly tell that these were dummies that was thrown out of the car. But at the same time, they look real, because you got bodies just sliding all over the road. The car flips over, crashing into a pole and everything where fire hydrant is. So you got water all over the place. 3 of the guys end up dying. Well, 2 of them died instantly. One who was thrown from the car and skidded across the road, he didn't die right away, but he did die on the scene. And Jack, he somehow survives, and he ends up, kind of limping away and everything. And then it turns out the people that they robbed was actually, the mob and everything. And the priest that got shot was actually the main gangster's brother. So he vowed to, by any means necessary, by anything, he would do anything to get Jack, and take him out because of what he did. So that's how we're introduced to the four main guys that we are going to go on this wild journey with. And like I say, no one here is what you say a hero. Like I say, they all do bad things, to varying degrees, but they all do bad things basically. And they're all running from something. I thought that was kind of interesting, and that's the whole point of them getting to where they are in this small little town in South America. That they're all running from something. They all feel some type of guilt, whether it's survivor's guilt, survivor's remorse type of thing. The guilt of not being an honest person, being a killer, in a sense, or being, again, still being desperate and surviving also, type of thing. And I think it's a good thing that the movie kind of gives each character the emotional weight that they're dealing with, because the thing is, we as the audience, we get to see these men backstories, but the interactions between them, they never learn anything about anyone's backstory because they're all hiding out and going by assumed names. So no one gets too close to anybody to know anything about them. But I thought it was very interesting that they did this. So another question I'm gonna ask is, who really would be considered the actual protagonist of this foursome? Because I think if this movie was made, any one of these guys could be the main character, but since you put them all together, who exactly would be considered the main character? Because for me personally, I would almost say that Victor could be looked at as the main character because he has the highest stakes of them all, because of the fact that he had a wife, and so he's dealing with that. He has somebody that he actually, left behind when he disappeared, and he's still clinging on to that. And he has almost the most sympathy of the four. Next probably would be Jack. And like I said, that's just in my opinion. But I would love to know what you guys think of who would you actually consider to be the protagonist, especially out of those two. Which of those two would you consider really to be the protagonist of the movie, and everything? So the whole thing about Sorcerer and how they end up getting this, like the whole crust of the thing is they end up in this small town. They all working kind of like odd, like little jobs. Nilo, he's pretty much like kind of passing through, but he ends up sticking around for whatever reason, and everything. But when one of the oil plants gets blowed up and everything, and just fire just starts, they don't have the resources there to actually shut it down, so they need to get, some supplies down there to actually cap this thing off. And in the midst of looking around, they find that they have this nitroglycerin basically, but because it's been sitting so long, it hasn't been taken care of. Like if somebody sneezed wrong in front of it, the whole thing will blow up or whatever. So the oil man, Corletta, that's who the main guy is that works for the oil company. He's like, okay, well, how do we get this stuff down there and everything? It's like, well, we can't fly it because of, the turbulence and all the jostling around. Hell, damn helicopter, it'll blow up before it even gets halfway there. And it's like, well, if there was some way we can transport it, in trucks and everything. And the other guy, he's like, well, who the hell would be crazy enough to do it? He's like, hey, don't worry about it. I'll figure it out. So they basically hold tryouts for the best drivers, and we get the sequence of where the guys, like all the guys that are quote unquote supposed to be great drivers in this town, they all audition to drive, and of course um the main guys, they end up getting picked. But also there's another guy who gets picked because it's actually Dominguez, that's Jack, Victor, who's I think going by Serrano or something like that, um, and Martinez, Cassim. But then there's another guy who is also the fourth man, and that would be uh, Marquez, played by Carl John. Those were the four that was selected. Everybody else was basically told kick rocks, right? And during the night, Martinez goes to check on Marquez, and he sees where he's been killed, and he sees Nilo just kind of like lingering around the street because everybody kind of seen this dude when he first arrived, and they already looked at him kind of suspicious, like who the hell is he and why is he even here? Because of how he's dressed, and it's like okay, so he was ready to basically go after Nilo, but that's when Corletta and Jack and Victor, they show up, and it's basically like he killed him and all this type of stuff, and Corletta was like, I'm gonna get the cops over here and all this. He was like, wait. Jack's like, wait, we still need a fourth man. So you gonna replace him. So that's how Nilo ended up going along on his job or whatever. Which I thought was very interesting that, you had a fourth guy and then he just kind of literally kills his way into the group, and everything. So basically what it is two trucks that they have to end up rigging up some type of way, and then they're going to go on this 218-mile journey through the jungle to get to this oil rig that's going up in flames basically. And it initially, of course, it starts off like, okay, it's cool or whatever. And as they're going through the jungle, they get to a certain point, and Victor and Jack, they kind of get into an argument because there's this whole thing about, okay, which way we're supposed to go. The map says we're supposed to go this way, but I don't trust that way. But this is the right way to go. And they end up going down through this jungle part. That's supposed to be the right way, but they get to this rickety, dilapidated bridge. And Jack and because it's Jack and Cassim together, and then it's Victor and no, it's Jack and Nilo together, and then it's Victor and Cassim together in their truck. So Jack and Nilo, they they're looking at like, okay, how the hell are we supposed to cross this bridge? But also at the same time, you have this, it's almost like a hurricane that's passing through, but it's like one of the worst storms that they have to cross. And this sequence is like the big sequence of the movie. I think whenever this movie is even brought up, this is the part of the movie that's always shown. I mean, the poster is that shot of the person that's, he's out there on the bridge, the truck is trying to cross, and it just looked like insane. It just looked like something insane or whatever. But this sequence, and especially the part with Jack and Nilo going across the bridge, because Nilo at first he's like, I ain't doing this shit, and basically tries to run away, and Jack has to hawk him down and basically tells him like, we're gonna do this, and you're gonna guide me across this bridge because I can't do this without you. So Nilo, he's struggling to get across because like this bridge, like I said, I don't know how this bridge has to be at least like almost hundreds of years old. That's how this thing looks or whatever, right? And he's climbing across the bridge ahead of Jack, who's in the truck, and he's trying to navigate and go through this bridge. And probably the one of the best shots of a movie is where Nilo is actually sitting on the bridge, and this is the part where I mean by sorcerer, like doing some sorcery type stuff, because Nilo, he's even though he's directing Jack like which way, either to go right, go left, and everything with his hands, but it's just that image of him sitting there on the bridge and the way he's kind of moving his hands. It's almost like he is, in a way, like he's pulling the strings of the truck to go right, to go left. And like I said, it's one of the greatest shots in a movie, in my opinion. And the fact that this was done with practical effects, because they actually rigged this bridge to kind of operate the way they want it. The pieces that are breaking is all done, strategically how they want it to do. And there was real, I mean, it's like real danger here because if this truck just crunched into the bridge and went down, that's the end of them, period. Um, and the fact that it just the sound effects for this is awesome. I mean, it's just like it's kind of hard to explain, but it is one of the best things. I'm pretty sure, like anyone, if you see anything about Sorcerer, you're gonna see this scene. And me watching this movie, like I'm actually sitting there, and it was the most tense thing that I'm watching because it's like the wrong move, and yeah, like that's it. These dudes are dead pretty much, but they managed to get across and everything like that. And then when we have to watch Victor and Castle, we think, okay, we're gonna kind of have something similar. No, they kind of get it the worst because they get trapped on the bridge for a minute and get trapped all up in the trees and all this type of stuff, branches. Like they really went through it. Castle, he has to get out and use the winch to try to, lock it in so the truck could even get off of there. But at the same time, the tree was damn near coming down. And like I said, I would say they actually got it worse than what Jack and Nilo had to go through. But that first part with Jack and Nilo going across, like I said, it is probably some of the best, like a best sequence in a movie that I've ever seen. And I know this is the first time me watching it, and I do plan to watch the movie a few more times, and everything. So I could be prisoner of the moment, but just from watching it initially, it's like this is some great stuff. And like for me, somebody who enjoys looking at things like this, especially practical effects when it comes to movies and stuff like that, I get enjoyment out of just stuff like that because it's like, especially 1977, like they did this then. Like if they tried to do that now, it'd probably be CGI up their ass and everything. But now, well, back then I should say, they did this all practical, and I've always been a huge fan, am a huge fan of practical effects with stuff. And I'm pretty sure anyone who was able to see this movie at the movie theater, anybody who went to see this and like, I don't want to see no Star Wars shit, type of thing. But anyone who saw this on the big screen, I'm pretty sure doing that scene, you're probably sitting there just in awe and in amazement of what you're watching and everything. And I do feel like this is something that I would love to see on the big screen, and everything. Granted, probably never will, but it feels like this is one of those movies that should be experienced on the big screen, and everything. So I don't, like I said, I don't think that this sequence could be done in a movie necessarily today. I think the only person that probably could even pull something like that off would probably be probably two people. George Miller, because of some of the stuff that he was doing in Mad Max Fury Road. I think he probably could do it. And then Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie could probably pull this off in some type of way. I'm surprised Tom Cruise never even thought about doing it because I'm pretty sure he has seen Sorcerer, but I don't know if they would even do something, but they would probably be the only ones that I could really think of that could probably pull this off. So I have another question. Like, who do you think could pull this sequence off in modern day filmmaking with, I would say, little CGI? Not, I mean, of course they wouldn't do completely no CGI, but little to no CGI. Who, as filmmakers, do you think that could probably pull this sequence off? So the next thing here is one of the things that I think helps with what makes Sorcerer a interesting and good watch of a movie is the atmosphere that they're in and also the tension. Like there's literally high stakes. I mean, you're driving in these trucks that have this volatile nitroglycerin in it, and you have to be able to navigate through the terrain, through this, across this wild ass bridge, and any slight moves that you have to do, like, yeah, if we make the wrong move, we're done. type of thing. So you got the jungle, you have the rain, and then of course the extreme heat in certain places that they do, and then the isolation part, like they're out in the middle of literally nowhere and everything. Yeah, it's two people together, but still you're out in the middle of nowhere. If something happened to you, nobody's pretty much gonna find you, and if someone do find you, you better hope that it's not the, like a guerrilla unit that's out there that's wanna rob you basically. And everything. So it's like there's a lot of things that is very high stakes in this movie. A lot more so than other movies that might have similar, ish plots and everything. And everything like that. And I think the environment becomes one of the film's biggest enemies. Like you're facing Mother Nature, and who's actually going to win? Is it going to be you, or is it going to be Mother Nature? In a sense, and everything. So something I want to talk about is the fact that this movie is very stressful. Like it just them driving, with these trucks, and then of course, like I say, the bridge sequence, and then there's a couple other things that they have to go through. This movie is very stressful. I feel like it's one of the most stressful movies probably ever made. So then it got me thinking, like, what are some other movies in the same vein would you consider to be very stressful? I know Whiplash is one, but that's more from a physical, well, not so much physical, but a mental stress. Granted, this movie has mental stress, but it also has the physical stress. But it's more of a, I would say, like movie like a Whiplash in a sense, because again, I mean, J.K. Simmons is a freaking madman in that movie, and Miles Teller is going through it. Gravity, I think with Sandra Bullock, it kind of falls into that very stressful situation. Another movie I probably would kind of sort of put into that category would probably be Sunshine to a degree, especially at certain points of the movie is like very stressful trying to do certain things. In that movie, I would almost kind of put it there. But there's a lot of movies that could be considered very stressful, as far as what the characters are going through. But I don't think any movie is on this level of stress in a sense, and everything. But I would love to know what you guys think. Like, what are some of the most stressful movies you've ever watched? And everything. Because this is definitely one of the most stressful movies I've ever watched. And then too, let's circle back to why I think that Sorcerer didn't do so well, why it failed at the box office. Of course, Star Wars and everything. But what if it didn't come out around the same time as Star Wars? Like how do you market this movie really? Because like I say, the movie's called Sorcerer, but it's about guys that are driving on this suicide mission, but it's called Sorcerer. So it's like even the marketing kind of failed in the sense of, and we've seen that with movies, like movies, get mismarketed or whatever, and that in a way kind of ruins the box office to a degree, for the movie. And then again, coming back to the title, what does Sorcerer actually mean in relations to this movie? And then also too, what did the audience of 1977, what did they expect going into this movie? Did they expect The Exorcist? Did they expect the French Connection? Like what did they expect based off of what Friedkin had done before? So that, I mean, like I said, there was a few factors that kind of go into why this movie failed. But then of course the biggest reason is like, well, it came out relatively around the same time as Star Wars, and Star Wars was king. So, but I would say this, if the movie came out today, would it do better? And also, would it actually play at the movie theater, or would it be actually on a streaming service? More so, and which one would actually be more successful? Would the streaming service be more of a success for this movie, or playing at the movie theater? Would it be more successful? And everything, because we are in that age now where it's like, well, a movie that could do really good in streaming, but would it get the same eyeballs on it if it was released in theater, and then vice versa, like type of thing? Because that is the world we live in now with streaming services. And then of course it's kind of certain movies can get people to the movie theater and pack it and make a lot of freaking money. And then there's others is like, I think I'll wait for it to hit streaming, type of thing. So let's talk about why I feel like this movie has aged well, and everything. Of course, they did a whole, I think it was a Criterion version of it and everything like that. I actually rented it, whatever, because it's not streaming anywhere. So I actually ended up renting it, and I do plan on to buy it and add it to my collection, and everything. But I think the practical effects, it still holds up. Um, I was very intrigued by the characters, even though I feel like Cassim, he, I would say he's probably the least interesting of the four to me. Nilo, he's a mystery, and even by the end of the movie, he's still very much a mystery, um, and everything. But the two characters that really, I think, have the most in, interesting stories is Jack and Victor, and it sucks too because, spoiler alert, uh, everyone does not make it. Um, Matter of fact, three of the four don't make it, but two get killed in a freak accident that happens because of the terrain and everything. Where, and I'm talking about Victor and Cassim, where they're on this like mountainside, and everything, and they're driving and they blow a tire because, well, they was talking, and Victor, he brings up about his gold watch that was given to him by his wife for the anniversary and everything. He's talking about that. And in the midst of having that conversation, tire get blowed out and he loses control of the truck and he goes into a ditch. And of course, with the nitroglycerin, it explodes. And Jack and Nilo, because they're like way ahead of them, they turn back, they look back and they see the explosion. So they go back, and they just see like, there's really nothing left. I mean, there's just bits and pieces of the truck everywhere, but there's nothing of them left and everything. And while they're parked there, they get ambushed by these, I guess, like guerrilla unit or whatever, who may or may not have been responsible for blowing up the oil rig and everything, because that's what they were talked about, like the rebels, might be responsible for this and everything like that. So they holding them at gunpoint and pretty much like they're gonna kill them but try to take the truck. And the one guy, he's asking like, what are you carrying? And Jack is like, carrying supplies, like ain't got nothing and everything like that. So he was gonna let them probably take the truck, and then they bouncing around the thing that's gonna get blowed up. That's probably what Jack was gonna do. But in the midst of them trying to get Nilo out of the truck, because he's pretending like he's really sick and everything, and in the midst of Nilo comes out with his gun, he shoots and kills two. Jack, he kills the one that had the gun on him because he turned around and looked away. Jack hits him with a shovel and everything. But in the midst of Nilo shooting, he ends up getting shot. So Jack puts him back in the truck and he starts hightailing because he's not too far away from the site, but he's still a good ways away, and he's exhausted and he's just kind of running on fumes at this point, and mentally basically. And as he's driving, Nilo ends up dying, but then he's alone at this point. He has to cross like this desert area, and he's like, his mind is kind of going in and out, but the truck ends up running out of gas, where he ends up getting the crate out and he gets it to the site and everything. But it's just this whole thing of like, say, who is actually the protagonist or whatever. Yeah, Jack survives the whole mission, but is he really? I don't know. I felt like sympathy for Victor, and I kind of felt bad when he died. Not so much Cassim and everything, but I felt a little bad when Victor died because of his wife, and everything. So it is very character driven, very much so, because like I said, you spend a lot of time with these guys, I think, and that's one of the reasons why that setup with the 4 vignettes works so well, because you get to know exactly who these men are, even if they don't really know who each other are, but you get to know, as a audience member, you get to know who they are. And the fact that as time has gone on, and that's the great thing about movies in a lot of ways, and I can attest to this. Movies that might not do so well in their initial release, years can go by, and audiences will find a way to bring a lot of those movies back into the forefront with however they discover it. And this is one of those movies that did, get new life, where people started to rediscover this movie and everything. And then, I mean, I would put it in the same class of movies like The Thing, Blade Runner, um, hell, even Repo Man, um, Shawshank Redemption, movies like that, that when they came out for various reasons, they didn't do well at the box office, but years later, people find these movies and be like, wow, this is a really freaking good movie. And next thing you know, through word of mouth, movie becomes a cult classic and become remembered even better years after its release than when it initially came out. So a lot of times, like when movies come out now and they don't do so well, I always kind of think about, well, it might not look good now, but you never know, 10, 15, 20 years from now, if people are rediscovering them, and they might get a different set of eyes looking at it, and it might get remembered very different than how we look at it when it was initially released, and everything. So that's always kind of a good thing, because I would say this: I knew nothing really of the movie, other than William Friedkin directed it, Roy Scheider was in it, but I didn't really know what the hell the movie was really about, and everything. But like I said, I've always heard about it, and that bridge scene always, piqued my interest about this movie. So this was a movie that I've been wanting to do for a while on the podcast, and everything. And I'm glad I was able to talk about it, a little bit, and everything like that for this episode. So before I actually get up out of here, as I always do, I always like to ask questions and things like that. So here are a couple of questions I have for you guys that are listening. So the first question: is Sorcerer Friedkin's masterpiece? Granted, he did the French Connection. Granted, he did the Exorcist. But is this a masterpiece for him? And if this is not his masterpiece, which film of his would you consider to be his masterpiece? The next question I have would be, what's the most underrated movie from the 1970s? I think this is very much up there. I mean, you have a whole decade. There's a lot of freaking movies. But what would you consider to be the most underrated movie from the 1970s? And the last question I will ask is, practical effects or CGI for suspense? Which is better? Me, of course, anyone who knows me knows that I'm going to say practical effects every day, all day, every day. But I would love to know what you guys think about that. So, of course, you can leave those on the episode wherever you listen to the podcast at. I'm pretty sure you can leave a comment on it. If you're listening on YouTube, of course, comment down below what you think about it, and everything. So that is pretty much for this episode. I feel like, Sorcerer deserved to be talked about on the podcast. I had a lot of fun talking about it, and everything. I will be watching this movie again, and everything like that. And I mean, it's good. The Sorcerer is getting to, people are rediscovering it. I'm discovering it for the first time. Well, I shouldn't say discovering it for the first time, but watching it for the first time and everything like that. I think it stands out as a very good thriller, because it is. It's definitely a thriller, and everything. And I would say it's also essential viewing, especially for people who enjoy how movies are made, and in certain stories like this, I do feel like it's an essential watch movie. It is. I would say it's definitely a movie that should be seen at least once, and everything like that. So again, thank you guys for listening. That is all for this episode. Of course, you can follow me across all social medias, whether it's on Instagram at JMT Podcast, I'm on Threads as the J Giles. I'm also on Facebook. You can follow me over there on Facebook as well, and everything. Of course, all the movie talk episodes are part of the TV Zone Podcast Network, wherever you listen to your podcast at. Also, if you're someone who listens strictly on YouTube, you can definitely follow the page over on YouTube. I do appreciate all the views and the followers that I am picking up over on YouTube. I did release a special episode exclusively on YouTube, so it goes with episode 372 in a sense. But if you want to check that episode out and you not listen on YouTube, go ahead over to the YouTube channel, if you will, and check that episode out, and also hit the follow button if you will also. If you like this episode, I definitely would appreciate likes, any comments and everything like that is very much appreciated like that, and everything. And I will be doing something similar for this episode as well over on YouTube also, and everything. But that's all for episode 373. I'll be back for episode 374, where I'll be wrapping up the month with something a little bit less stressful. I know the last couple of weeks we've talked about, greed and crime and, survival. So I'm going to end Old School June with something much more personal and a little bit more of a coming of age classic, if you will. Something that celebrates friendship, something that celebrates laughter, and the bittersweet reality of growing up in the hood. I'm talking about Coolie High. I'm going to be talking about Coolie High. That's another one that I've been wanting to do on the podcast for a while, and everything like that. So that is how I'm going to end the month of June for Old School June. I'm going to end it talking about Coolie High and everything like that. So thank you guys for listening. I will catch you guys next time. Peace.